Hello, hello. Hope everyone had a fantastic Thanksgiving. Let's get started. Chapter 17 Woolruff. Jeff woke up in dim light again, but this time he recognized the room. He was not connected to any monitors now, though. His eyes adjusted quickly. He was used to that now, too, and didn't really notice it. He felt firm restraints of some sort holding him in place. So they had him again. His memory was clear enough, with the bunch of robots forcing him down. Surgeon One had somehow introduced a substance into his neck. Jeff supposed it had gone into one of the nutrient avenues to his brain. In any case, he had been sleeping and still felt drowsy and languid. He was alone in the room, which was silent, but he could hear faint noises beyond the walls. His enemies were probably holding a meeting of some sort. By concentrating, he was able to turn up his oral accuracy and just make out some familiar voices. "The first law problem I experienced was this," said Surgeon One. "We have reason to believe that the transplantation of Jeff's brain into a robot body has adversely affected him. If so, then the first law requires that we undo the transplant, once we have scanned Derek for the knowledge we need to repair Jeff's body." "So what's the problem?" Ariel asked. "The problem is Jeff's resistance," said Surgeon One. "We are not certain that the transplant has adversely affected him. Without the imperative of the first law, we cannot transplant his brain, or even test him, without his permission." "And he certainly doesn't seem inclined to give it," Derek observed. "There's not much doubt about that." Jeff muttered to himself. "You're right about that, Frosthead. You're absolutely right about that. You want to take my body away from me again? You want to make me into a weakling again, like you? Stop me from taking over this planet? Ha!" "When is he due to wake up?" said Research One. "Any time now," said Surgeon One. "Then I suggest, first, that we be more cautious in discussing him, since he may hear us," said Surgeon One. "And second, that we consult with him and make certain that he understands our position." "Good idea," said Derek. "Alpha, you and Woolruff stay here. That room won't hold all of us comfortably." The moment the door opened, letting in a shaft of bright white light, Jeff shouted, "Let me out of here! You have no right to hold me prisoner. None of you do. Now let me up!" They lined up at the foot of his bed, shoulder to shoulder, watching him in silence. Research One and Surgeon One on the left, and Derek and Ariel on the right. "Frost, don't you understand your own laws?" Jeff demanded of the robots. "Yes," said both robots in unison. They looked anxiously at Derek and Ariel. "It's not that simple, Jeff," said Derek. "Look, there's a possibility that a medical problem—" "Sure it is," Jeff growled. "I want to get up and out. That's very simple, so let me up and out. What are you after me for, anyway? I didn't do anything." "You're not yourself, Jeff," said Ariel sympathetically. "A little while ago you were shouting about taking over. Remember talking to me through some sort of broadcasting link? You told me we could be very powerful here. But I don't think that's really you." "It is now," Jeff said haughtily. "They created the new me, and now this is me, and you have no right to make me over again." "All they really need at this stage," said Derek, "is to run some tests on you. They want to find out if there's a chemical imbalance in your brain that they caused." "Making me crazy? Is that it? You're telling me I've gone crazy? I'm not stupid, I'll tell you that much. I know you want to get rid of me. You don't like having someone as powerful as I am around, do you? Huh?" Jeff laughed triumphantly and loudly. "Jeff," said Ariel, "they have to act according to the laws, and they can't do that fully unless they run their tests. That way they'll know exactly where you stand." "Frost!" Jeff yelled angrily. "If they have to obey the laws, then why don't they let me go when I tell them to, huh?" "The responsibility is larger than that," said Derek. "Since they put you in this condition, and the laws demand that they make sure you're really okay, the test alone won't hurt you any or change you." "Oh, yeah? How do I know that, huh?" Jeff looked around at them all. "Supposedly this transplant couldn't hurt me either, only now you're all saying that they might have made a mistake. Well, what if they make another one? What about that?" Derek glanced at the robots, who said nothing. "Let's leave him alone for a while," said Derek. "Come on." Before they left, Research One turned on one of the machines in the room. Jeff understood its purpose. The white noise would drown out his ability to eavesdrop anymore. When Jeff was alone again, with the door closed, he tested his restraints. He couldn't see what they were, since he was flat on his back, but they were stronger than he was. If he was going to get out of this untouched by the robots, he would have to argue his way out. Somehow. Back in the testing room, Derek turned to his companions with an exaggerated shrug. "Well, now what?" "I regret to interrupt," said Alpha, "but I must inform you of a fundamental change in my identity." "What?" Derek turned to him. "What are you talking about?" "At the time you instructed me to use my cellular arm, I experienced a signal from it changing my designation from Alpha to Mandelbrot." "Mandelbrot?" Ariel said. "Why?" "I do not know." "What does it mean?" Derek asked. He was annoyed at the interruption his train of thought about Jeff, but he could not ignore the mystery. "It means nothing other than a name to me," said Mandelbrot. "And it came from your cellular arm at the time I gave you the order to use it." Derek thought a moment. "It was encoded in your arm when I found the part then. Using your flexibility triggered the signal." "Could it be a safety measure of some kind?" Ariel asked. "Maybe a warning. This whole planet seems to be programmed with fear and security in mind. His arm came from an Avery robot on that asteroid, didn't it?" "That's right," said Derek. "I don't know exactly what the signal means. Perhaps it was triggered by the combined use of some Avery parts and some standard robot parts together." He looked at Ariel. "Maybe it means another signal has been sent out to call Avery back." "If he's alive." "Yeah." Derek shook his head. "First things first. Let's get back to Jeff." "That theory is inconsistent with another important change in me." "What is it?" Derek asked impatiently. "My store of data pertinent to the location of this planet was erased at the time of the name change." Derek and Ariel both turned to him. "How important is that?" Derek demanded. "You can still program a ship away from here to a major space lane, can't you?" "Given the considerable length of space lanes, I believe so. However, this memory erasure suggests that the signal from my arm was definitely related to the security and isolation of this planet." "Good point," said Derek, "but once we leave this place I'm not going to care. Let's get back to Jeff." "I surmise that your visit was not productive," said Mandelbrot. "May I assist you in any way?" "I haven't thought of how yet," said Derek. "The trouble so far is that the robots can't treat him without permission, and Ariel and I, who don't need permission, don't have the skill to treat him. Anybody have any suggestions?" He looked around at all of them. "Is there anything we can do to prove that Jeff is out of his head?" Ariel asked. Then she covered her mouth in embarrassment. "Sorry, didn't mean to phrase it that way." Derek smiled wryly. "We're all under a strain." "I cannot think of anything," said Research One. "The kind of unmistakable scientific evidence you require to reach a conclusion is available only through a direct analysis of his physical condition." "Frost! Derek!" Ariel turned to Research One. "How about us? Can you teach us to help just a little? If we extracted samples of fluid for you and you analyzed them afterward, would that be acceptable?" Research One hesitated just long enough to reveal some doubt behind his answer. "The acceptability of that arrangement would ultimately rest on how skillful you became. Drawing a sample of synthetic blood would not be difficult, I believe. However, he does not have much margin for error. Unlike naturally evolved biological bodies, Jeff's robot body has almost exactly the amount of fluid he requires. Taking too much could be fatal." "You can make extra," said Derek. "Give him a transfusion while the procedure's going on." "You would have to administer the transfusion as well," said Surgeon Two, "and you'd have to avoid flooding his system, as well as starving it. Nor could you risk mixing the new fluid with the old, or the analysis could be worthless. At this point we have confronted more complex procedures, including constant study and understanding of the monitors. We would be in violation of the first law if we allowed Jeff to take significant risks in this matter." Derek nodded, though he was disappointed. "I can't argue with that. The truth is, I'm not sure I'm ready for responsibility over his life that way myself." Ariel sighed. Then we need to get the permission of a crazy guy. Any idea how to get it?" Jeff wasn't tired, really, but he'd closed his eyes and rested for lack of anything else he could do. He was imprisoned by enemies who were afraid of his power, but he had not given up hope. He could afford to be charitable, once he had taken over. He opened his eyes at the sound of the door opening, but when he looked he couldn't see anyone. Then the door closed again. He stiffened at a faint padding sound around on the floor. "Who's there?" he demanded suspiciously. "Is Woolruff," said an odd voice. "What?" The caninoid alien climbed gently onto the floor of the bed. She had been near death by starvation the only other time he had seen her. Now her mottled brown and gold fur was full and glossy, and her eyes alert and bright. She was perhaps the size of a large dog, such as a small St. Bernard, but her face was flat, without an extended snout, and her ears stood high and pointed. Instead of paws, she had clumsy-looking grey-skinned fingers on what he supposed were hands. "My name is Woolruff to Oomans. Is really—" She made an unpronounceable noise and bared her teeth in what might have been a playful smile. "Woolruff, I came to thank you for having fed me," said Woolruff. "Alpha told me you saved my life." "Yeah? Now what do you want?" "Want nothing," said Woolruff. "Thank you." Jeff watched her for a moment. "You okay now? Is that Alpha taking care of you properly?" "Everything is fine." "He just didn't know how to handle this town, did he?" "No. It's stranger even here in City of Robots." "Wait a minute. I remember now. I get it. These other robots didn't have to help because you aren't human." "It's true." Jeff laughed in his still unfamiliar robot voice. "Yes, yes, Jeffrey. The city belongs to you. Only you can see the needs of people here. You can do what no one else can." He caught Woolruff's eye. "Huh? Right? Huh? You should know." She blinked mildly at him. "Huh? Right?" he insisted. "Right," she said. "But I am worried." "Oh?" Jeff said airily. "Anything else I can help with?" "Worried about my friend." Jeff hesitated. "Yeah? Who?" "You," said Woolruff, nodding at him. He started to retort, but Woolruff's quiet sincerity stopped him. "You're my new friend here," said Woolruff. "Saved my life. Don't want to hurt." "Everyone says that," said Jeff, but he seemed to lack the angry suspicion that he had felt before. "Who saved my life?" Woolruff repeated. "I guess I did. Are you saying you want to repay me?" Her caninoid shoulders twitched in a sort of furry shrug. "Won't force you." "You may be the first follower I have," Jeff said wonderingly. "Robots have yet to obey me. Derek and Ariel haven't really come around yet, you might say. What are you worried about anyhow?" "You could be sick." Jeff stiffened. "Sick? How can I be sick when I haven't got a normal body?" "Your brain could be sick." She nodded. "Could be. Could be fine." "They sent you in here, didn't they, to change my mind?" "No. They're too busy to remember Woolruff. Forgot about me. I just walked away while they were talking. Came to see you." "Really?" Jeff was surprised. "Just to see me?" "You've been alone on Robot City. Only one of your kind. I know about that. You could be sick and couldn't tell. Could find out." Jeff looked up at the ceiling. He had been feeling lonely now that she mentioned it. Maybe he was sick. "I don't trust them," he said to Woolruff. "I can take over the city, this whole planet. They want to stop me." The fire was gone, though. He felt it himself. He was tired. Emotionally tired. "Robots can't hurt you on purpose," she reminded him. "Make rare mistakes, but can't hurt human on purpose." "Derek and Ariel, robots can't allow them to hurt you either. Tests can tell you if you're sick or not." Jeff closed his eyes and sighed. Derek hadn't seen Woolruff leave the group in the testing room, but he noticed her coming back in. The little alien bore her distinctive teeth-baring grin when she looked up at him. "What is it, Woolruff?" he asked. "Jeff changed his mind. We'll take test now." Everyone turned to look at her. "Are you certain?" said Research One. "I've underestimated you before," said Derek. "Remind me not to do it again." "Woolruff, how did you manage that?" Ariel asked in astonishment. "Just talk to him," said Woolruff. "Suggest you don't talk to him, or he'll change his mind." "We'll take your word for it," said Derek. "Research One, you and Surgeon One go ahead and run your tests. I suggest that you also conduct a minimum of conversation with him. I guess he's still pretty unpredictable." "I will begin the procedures with Jeff," said Research One. "May I request that you allow Surgeon One to conduct the scans of your body that we have already discussed? The equipment is prepared, and the central computer will benefit from the information, regardless of Jeff's condition and wishes." "Sure." Derek turned to Ariel and Maldebrot. "As soon as I'm finished." "Right. We'll be here," she said with a grin. "Woolruff, too." Derek followed Surgeon One into a cramped room and stretched out, undressed, on a cold platform at the robot's bidding. The robot attached a variety of sensors to him, all connected to some of the worst-looking jury-rigged equipment Derek had seen on this planet. For one, the necessity for speed had overcome the values of minimalist engineering. The robots had put something together that would work, ignoring convenience and appearance. As Surgeon One ran various vibrations through parts of his body and shot him with invisible rays, Derek assured himself that once the emergency with Jeff was past, they would either improve the engineering of this equipment or discard it altogether. They weren't likely to allow an anomaly like this to remain as it was. Still, he felt a sense of petty satisfaction in seeing that they weren't always perfect. When the scans were finished, Derek got dressed as Surgeon One glanced over the monitors. "This is sufficient," said Surgeon One. "We are capable of restoring Jeff's body to a state of health, granted his normal recuperative powers after surgery. Research One has contacted me through his comlink and requests our presence back in the testing room." Research One was waiting when they got there. "Well," Derek said, "how is he?" "Erdőr's theory appears to be correct. The level of several hormones that can affect mood and behavior in humans were higher than we had intended. Given the limited blood supply, very small amounts skew the percentages." "I was sure he wasn't that bad a guy," said Ariel. "Me too," said Woolruff. "What are we going to do, though?" Derek asked. "Have you discussed this with him yet?" "No. Surgeon One and I must confer over the details. If Surgeon One agrees with me, then Jeff Leong is not responsible for his behavior. In that event, we would take the position that our judgment of his condition under the first law would override all his orders to us under the second law." "Whew!" said Ariel. "That's a very big step." "I think," said Derek, "that it's time for us to take care of some personal business. Research One, do you need further human assistance at the moment? If not, we have an important errand to run." "We do not require your assistance at this time," said Research One. "I request your return later in the day." "No problem." Derek turned to Mandelbrot with a big grin. "Okay, friend. Show us the spacecraft you've been waiting. I'll have to check its condition and facilities and all. Where is it?" "It is in a rural area just outside the urban perimeter. One of the tunnels will take us close to the spot." "Let's go. You, Woolruff, Ariel, and me." The trip out to the perimeter was uneventful, except for the glow of excitement that Derek and Ariel shared. Once they reached the construction perimeter, they had to start hiking. Fortunately, Mandelbrot had chosen a broad open field for his landing, with only a short cushion of broad-bladed blue ground cover. "I see it!" Ariel shouted, pointing to a sliver of blue silver glinting in the sunlight. It was just beyond a gentle rise in the terrain. Derek looked up eagerly, then felt a sudden weight of disappointment, even though it was mostly out of sight. He didn't say anything, though, until they had topped the rise and were looking on the sleek, undamaged craft. Ariel, too, stopped in surprise. "It's a life pod," Derek said dully. It was so small that even the gently rolling ground had hidden it almost completely. "Correct," said Mandelbrot. "A somewhat converted life pod. I modified it." "Alpha," said Derek, shaking his head. "Mandelbrot, I mean. I detect distress, said Mandelbrot. What is the cause? Whatever your name is, Ariel wailed. We wanted to get out of here, but the ship has only room for one. I travelled with him, said Woolruff. Mandelbrot, why didn't you tell us it could only carry one full-sized humanoid? Derek asked. I asked you where it was, what condition it was in, and so on. The only subject of discussion at that time was the welfare of Jeff Leong. I surmise that you wanted it for his use. It is adequate for that purpose. Yeah, Derek sighed. So it is. He slipped an arm casually around Ariel's shoulders. I think it's more important to get Ariel off the planet, though. She has something to take care of. She took his hand and squeezed it, probably for not mentioning her disease in particular. How did you modify it? Derek asked. I was able to give it a significant drive ability. Also, I was able to create a space for Woolruff. I myself used the space principally intended for human use, but of course I do not have the supply requirements. The supply space was available for her provisions. Derek nodded, staring silently at the little ship. No one else spoke. They all seemed to realize the realization and what it meant to him. Finally, when he turned away, they followed him back to the tunnel stop without a word. By the time they returned to the facility, Research 1 and Surgeon 1 were just leaving the OR. Are you finished already? Ariel asked in surprise. How is he? The procedures have apparently been successful so far, said Surgeon 1. Unlike the transplantation into his robot body, which will require no recovery period, his human body will require an extended recuperative phase with close attention from us. The most important unknown factor now is his biological recuperative power, of which we have little experience, said Research 1. However, Do you think he'll be okay? Derek interrupted. Right. Right? Correct, said Research 1. Well, what about his attitude? Ariel asked. Will his emotional state be normal again? We will have to wait for data about that question. He will sleep for many hours yet, said Surgeon 1. We will also have him mildly tranquilized when he first awakens, to guard against further shock when he finds himself fully human again. If his body is truly recovering, said Research 1, his serum levels in all cases should gradually return to normal. I surmise that the effect will not be immediate, but our information is poor on this subject. Ariel nodded. We'll be moving along, said Derek. I'm going to get on the central computer and see about refurbishing a certain little spacecraft. Also, how many further modifications it might take. Keep us up to date on Jeff through my console, all right? And thus ends the chapter. I hope you enjoyed. And hope you come back next week. Bye.